Welcome to the Hustling Podcast. Today we are joined by Finnegan Shepard, who is the founder and CEO of Both and Apparel. Hi there, Finnegan. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Well, thank you. Thanks for joining us today. Before we kick in, for folks at home who might not know about you guys, if you could maybe tell us more about the platform and the work that you guys do.
Yeah, so Both End is a brand designing for transmasc and non-binary consumers. I'm trans myself, and my background's not in fashion or in business, but I kind of spent my whole life waiting for somebody to realize that my needs and desires as a consumer were different than cisgender consumers, and also that this was a really large emergent market, and no one really picked up the challenge. And so eventually I got tired of waiting and decided to create it myself. Um, and began with a bunch of research, pretty humble early stage, but since then it's really taken off, and we're definitely striking a nerve in terms of building something that people have really been waiting for and that adds a lot of value.
Yeah, I'm sort of interested in talking about binary fashion because I think oftentimes that's something that sort of folks don't think about really when you're going into a shop. It's almost like, well, I'm just gonna go into the shop, go to the ladies section, go to the gents section, and just go about my day. But I mean, as someone who might not sort of identify within those binaries, of course, then there's sort of a moment where you're sort of now trying to figure out where do you place yourself. I'm interested in finding out, since you sort of started this work, looking at when you started up until now, have you sort of noticed any changes within specifically the fashion industry as far as catering and sort of thinking about non-binary folks?
Yes, I would say there is a lot more noise around it now. I wouldn't necessarily say there's a lot more signal, to use that kind of well, that's not exactly what I mean. There's a lot more noise. I wouldn't say that there's a lot more effective innovation going on. When I first started building Both And, I was not the first queer brand on the market, but I kind of divided what I saw into a few different categories. There were a lot of brands, both large and small, that I think really thought you could solve this issue just through branding or through slogans. So they would take, wholesale regular t-shirts that are made in the proportions of cisgender men and women, and they put like a trans pride flag on it or whatever. Which, to me, the analogy I always use for that is like, that's like giving a pregnant woman a regular t-shirt that says, I'm pregnant. It's like, no, the body is a different shape. Like, you need different clothing. That's the whole point here. So I never really was drawn to that myself, or felt like that was what the community really needed or deserved. And then I would say that there's also been a large and increasing movement towards kind of agender or unisex fashion. This is done more by large brands, which I think the way they work around this problem of non-binary identity is by assuming that everyone just wants to wear really baggy clothing, and that kind of erases gender. And again, I think there are some people who like that as a stylistic choice, but it wasn't what I was looking for. What I wanted was clothing that was just fit in the right proportions to my body. And my hypothesis was that there were a lot of other people out there who wanted that as well. So that was really the big product innovation that Both And added, is like, it's not just about marketing and branding, and it's not about this like, great, like literally anybody can put on a 4X shirt and it will like technically fit your body, in as much as like it will go over your head and sit on your body. But that doesn't mean it's actually a good fit. And it doesn't mean that it's an accurate representation of gender identity or presentation. So both those sectors have grown. They're growing more. We see a lot, even in the last 6 months, not necessarily just apparel, but, think about the Target backlash, think about Budweiser, think, there's a lot of big brands now who are realizing that the non-binary consumer is a really large and growing consumer segment, but they don't know how to wade into the space. And when they try, they tend to get kind of enormous backlash from both sides of the aisle. So I think it's very top of mind for everyone, but most people aren't really sure how to go about addressing it in a way that's going to actually be well received.
Yeah, I'm sort of interested in how sort of the platform has been received. What's the traction like? I mean, I'm sure, of course, you're solving quite a very, I'd say, quite a very urgent issue. Especially, I mean, clothes. We wear clothes every day, so that's a solution for that would need to be very urgent. I'm interested in how the traction has been so far since you guys started.
Yeah, it's been really, really strong. I mean, like I said, when I started this, it was very humble. It was sort of like, I want to make some t-shirts for me and a couple friends. And as soon as we got product out into the market and it started selling really quickly and people were telling other people about it, and there was this huge demand for all these other styles and iterations and more sizes and more colors, it's really just been off to the races. And we haven't seen any kind of plateau or end to the demand. I think right now we're just building as fast as we can in this space with the resources that we have. Um, but there's very obviously so much more to be done in this space because the list of what people want and the reaction to every new product we drop is very, very high.
Sure. Speaking of scaling and sort of developing, we have an audience here at Hustle Wing that is mostly side hustlers and contract workers. Two questions, are there any projects that you guys are working on or even challenges that you guys, could see yourselves leveraging some contract work from some of our network?
The first thing that comes to mind is I am forever on the hunt for a real data ninja on the growth side of things. We do incredibly well with organic marketing. And I also think that it's tricky because we're such a niche space and understanding the psychology and the language around this consumer set is really, really important. So I've honestly had pretty bad experiences in the past when I've tried to outsource marketing to other people simply because like no one understands this consumer better than I do for obvious reasons. But I do think that while we're really, really strong on creating the content and knowing where the community hangs out and how to speak to them and how to foster that organic engagement, um, having the right person who loves nerding out on the analytics and the data and really understanding how to leverage that is something that I always kind of have in the back of my mind, looking for the right person for.
Sure. Thanks for that. I'm sure folks at home might be definitely going to be plugging in there. Before I let you go, Finnegan, you've sort of spoken to the vision and the goal, but I would like for us to go back there a little bit more and maybe flash that out a little bit more. I think we sort of spoke to it when we were talking about the inception and the industry. But I'm interested in your sort of ultimate goal and vision for the platform.
I want to be the go-to brand for the non-binary consumer globally. So we've been very targeted in our first beachhead market. It's been Transmask, it's been US, it's been apparel. But to me, that's really where we prove out the market and we build trust and authority. And ultimately, there's a lot of different categories that need to be solved. This consumer is everywhere. There's a lot of diverse needs. So I want to just, systematically tackle as many of these problems as possible and yeah, just do the best we absolutely can to serve the consumer and make sure that we have access to all the things that we need.
Sure. Thank you so much, Finnegan, for your time. Before I let you go, for folks at home who might want to reach out and learn more about both and maybe even reach out about the data opportunities, that data and analytics opportunities that you mentioned, where can folks find you guys online?
Yeah, so our handles are both and apparel, BOTH and apparel. Predominantly on Instagram, but also on TikTok and YouTube and Pinterest. And then if people are curious about the job specifically, they can email me, Finnegan at bothandapparel.com.
Cool. Thank you so much, Finnegan, for your time.
Yeah, no worries.